Hi, I'm Dr. Scott,
And I'm Dr. Shiloh.
and this is LA Not So Confidential, the forensic psychology and true crime podcast.
And each week we explore the intersection of psychology, the criminal justice system, and entertainment.
Today, our episode is on the forensic psych topic of Hybristophilia.
Hey everyone. So welcome back. Happy Halloween almost. It is good to be back from the Berkshires. How are you, Scott? Getting your full fall experience in order?
Yes, it's really good to change environments, but then to come back to LA, and with the fingers crossed that it's not going to be another fake fall, fake summer heat wave.
Yes. We had a wonderful time. We love these smaller, more intimate festivals, and the environment was absolutely perfect. So getting us in the mood for sure, even if weather in LA isn't cooperating with what we want, but that's okay. So today we have a shorter, creepy, and interesting episode for you guys just because of the season and because of all of our travel. We've had to cut down a little bit of our research time. But first, our last episode.
So in our last episode, we stretched the boundaries of LA Not So Confidential a little bit. While there wasn't particularly a direct link between body integrity, identity disorder, and criminal actions, we both found it to be a really fascinating opportunity to discuss mental health treatment interventions when it comes in contact with the ethical and legal parameters for mental health and medical providers. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, it's a fascinating subject. I think it's a great episode that left us both really fascinated and a bit dumbfounded because it brought up so much for us.
Yeah, for sure. It went into a direction that at first we weren't really sure, but we knew it was a fascinating disorder to cover. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about and consider. And, what will the future of science sort of discover down the road as possible treatments? So, yes, please go back and listen. So, as for today, just to introduce our topic here right off with a case study, there have definitely been a fair share of serial killers with so-called groupies. And in 1989, the trial of Richard Ramirez, LA's Night Stalker, began. Attorneys took note that the entire back row of the audience was filled with quote-unquote goth girls, young women wearing sunglasses and dressed in all-black clothing. But it wasn't just these goth girls. Young college students, professional women, all in attendance to wave at one of the slimiest, creepiest killers around. One woman who looked really just like anyone's suburban aunt was interviewed in old news footage, and she said, "I just want to see what he looked like. I thought he was cute." This is a man who would eventually be found guilty of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. And in 1985, prior to his trial, a woman who was a freelance magazine editor began writing him letters. The relationship developed, and after his conviction, she visited him up to 4 times a week in prison. They eventually married while he was on death row in San Quentin. When interviewed, she said she loved Ramirez, quote, more than anything in the world. And I just believe in him completely. He's kind, he's funny, he's charming. However, after DNA conclusively linked Ramirez with the rape and murder of a little girl, his wife cut all ties with him and filed for divorce. This wasn't the last of the pen pals or groupies. He had a variety of quote-unquote relationships until his death from cancer in 2013. So something that is just hard to wrap your mind around, right?
Right. And we're going to give you another case to listen to, folks, but we're going to come back and make a couple of observations about just this brief paragraph, which are very telling and weave into this disorder or this diagnosis. But as always, we have trigger warnings for this episode, and those trigger warnings include toxic relationships, physical assault, self-harm, and gun violence, as well as murder. So according to the American Psychology Association, hybristophilia is a paraphilia involving, quote, the sexual interest in and attraction to those who commit crimes. In some cases, this may be directed towards people in prison for various types of criminal activities, close quote. So it's also been called the Bonnie and Clyde syndrome as well. There's been other names that are actually a little bit more slurish and degrading towards women, and certainly have this sort of overall flavor of misogyny when we won't elaborate on those. But hybristophilia has taken on a bit of a new meaning beyond the paraphilic disorder criteria, which, if you recall, is recurring or intense sexual arousal to atypical objects, places, situations, fantasies, behaviors, or individuals. So it's also sort of evolved to include women who are obsessed with criminals, fangirling, pen pals, those sort of behaviors. And sexologist Professor John Money went so far as to define it as, quote, sexual arousal or attraction driven by the knowledge that the individual has committed an outrage or crime, such as rape, murder, or armed robbery. Very, very important distinction there. He's really honing down and chipping away, defining that definition, as it were. And there are quite a few theories as to why this sexual interest develops in someone. And from an evolutionary psychology perspective, this speaks to female attraction to an uber dominant male protector. This stems from primate research that finds that females prefer the larger, louder, more aggressive males who show clear markers of maleness.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating. I think it really commands and calls for additional research, though, because we've got evolutionary psychology experts and evolutionary biologist experts on this. And the process of science, I think, is fascinating because it's constantly uncovering things. And I can't help but think that even the perspective on the experts right now is indeed still shaped by our culture at large. You've got a modern perspective on something because not every woman is going to be completely attracted to a violent man. And that's not what we're saying.
Yeah, I agree. And it's sort of this like thought of by association to this ultimate bad boy, the female thinks she's going to gain some sort of status and protection for her and her offspring, right? Like if we're looking at it from that evolutionary perspective, which I think is
Right.
fascinating. I mean, I think I very easily could have gone into evolutionary psychology, but you feel like it's an explanation for something maybe deeply rooted still in our brains somewhere. But then you're like, but that only goes so far. What is the rest of what's going on here?
Right, because there's been really great research about the backgrounds of these individuals
True.
and a couple of common factors that we'll get into as we talk today.
Right. So there's also this notion of motivation on the part of the woman or whomever is pursuing these people that are behind bars in the sense of like having this perfect partner because he's a captive audience. So in this case, the male love interest, the prisoner, literally has nowhere to go if he's in prison and has really no other contact with women. So the idea that he's sort of desperate and will give all of his attention to her, only her, and that he will spend much of his time thinking about her is all part of the romantic fantasy. And I guess, I mean, the upside is she doesn't have to live with him either, right? She doesn't have to do his laundry. She doesn't have to cook for him. It's sort of a form of independent living relationship or a long distance relationship that sort of makes this perfect for some people with some personalities. And according to Sheila Eisenberg, who wrote the book Women Who Love Men Who Kill, after interviewing a number of these women, she found that they had extensive abuse backgrounds themselves, abuse perpetrated by parents, other partners, you name it. And she says, quote, by having a relationship with a man that is in prison, they are in a position of power, making all the decisions. As strange as it sounds, it's a safe relationship, end quote. And so we have said this when we've talked about hybristophilia here and there every once in a while, that these women spend loads of money getting to the prison, visiting. I mean, sometimes their entire life savings. I mean, I'm sure you saw this when you worked in prisons to some extent. I mean, I don't know how much you had in communication with like visitors and things, but what did you see or hear?
So I would not see any really contact with the visitors because the visiting hours were generally on weekends. And while most of California Department of Corrections has extended into weekend hours just because of the need for mental health services. The idea that you keep employee populations separate from family or visitor populations is actually very important, and it's something that
Yeah.
I think overall California Department of Corrections does a really good job. Now, the other side of that is that you hear a lot, especially as an inmate becomes more comfortable with you. Some of them would relax into this ease of talking about what they would consider to be legitimate relationships. Certainly, there
Hmm.
were some of those. And there were some guys who were carrying on 2 or 3 legitimate relationships, and they would swear up and down they all know about each other. I've been very plain with these 3 women. Like,
Right.
they know that there existed, like, I'm never getting out and they're welcome. Like, and I don't know if they were selling me a falsehood there that so I'm not like, I'm not letting myself buy into it. But I'm like, okay, well, that's what they told me. And then there were others who would be absolutely brag about having 12, 13, 14, 15 women on a string
Wow.
for putting money on their books, for sending them things, or even if it's not a transactional relationship when it comes to material gains or finances, it's a transaction because there is nothing to do in prison. Like,
Sure.
prisons across the country have taken away so many of the work options, which kept prisoners busy and generated income. So they're bored. They have nothing to do. Well, if you're bored, you're going to be creative and find ways to fill your time. And carrying on, multiple relationships where you're basically just using the same letter but changing the name over and
Uh-huh.
over again is going to be very successful. But I would go back also. I want to point something out about our Richard Ramirez introduction.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be a little bit dicky here. The
Okay.
freelance magazine editor.
Right.
Like, that whole description right there for 1985 is pretty wonky. And I don't know what that means. Like, you
Yeah.
freelance
Yeah.
magazine editor, like, magazines don't hire freelance editors, they hire freelance writers.
That's true.
But this is the thing. She visited him 4 times a week in prison.
Yeah. In
So
San Quentin.
in San Quentin. So that's an entire day right there, because you have to get there early in order to get in line. And then there's security, that process. And then you're sitting for another period of time while they're waiting for the inmates to be brought from their particular blocks or their units or their housing. So it's basically her full life was going to visit him in prison.
Yeah, and I think she was from down here. I think she was from the Burbank, Glendale area. So if she was remaining living down here at that time, I don't know how that's even possible.
Yeah, I don't get it at all. But it's interesting because it is how some smaller towns in Central California have built up around prison populations. Like Corcoran is a very small town, but it's got 2 enormous prisons
Right.
right there, basically in the sort of incorporated city limits. And it's a very economically depressed area because there are basically 2 jobs or 3 jobs. There's either working for the prison, which
Mhm.
means working for the state, which is very lucrative.
Yeah.
All the positions working for the state are very lucrative, or you move there because your loved one is incarcerated. And that happens to a lot of people. Like, I knew one inmate would share with me how upset he was that his dad had basically moved his entire life to Corcoran to be there to
Oh,
support him. And he goes, there's nothing here for him other than coming to visit me. And this is no life. I
wow.
mean, that was very interesting to me. And then the support services. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying, like, there's something about that story with Ramirez that makes it even more concerning. Like, I don't think that's an accurate representation of what's going on for her and her
Yeah,
decision to do that.
I totally agree, and I think we're making the differentiation here of, there's clearly already, like, existing relationships, and then somebody goes to prison, right? That's totally different. That's
Right, exactly.
that's that. Then there's, I think, the relationships that by somehow there's exposure to each other, whether it's a worker in the prison, which we have decided to maybe save for an entirely different topic and episode, that
Right.
gets close to an inmate that ends up having a relationship with them, Or say they're coming into the prison, from a religious organization or something like that, where this relationship kind of develops, but it's not what they are seeking or thought that they would seek. Hybristophilia, we're saying, no, this is the actual sexual attraction to the person that is
Because
there
they are there.
because they are there. And perhaps if we take that one even more drilled down definition that we talked about at the top, that it's because they have done something really, really heinous, like really bad. That's the sexual arousal piece. So there's such, like we say all the time with everything, there's such a spectrum here, but we're really honing in on this one piece of why would somebody have this unusual sexual interest?
One of the other phenomenon that I saw pretty regularly was when an inmate would be in a relationship with someone on the outside, and the way they met them was through their cellie or a friend they had made on the
Right,
yard who has a girlfriend that comes and or a wife that comes and visits them. And the guy goes, "Oh, your sister might like my buddy here." And the
right,
relationship starts up. So it's not like the the person on the outside, the hybristophiliac, exhibited like this desire to go find someone. It's like they were introduced,
right.
and yet they're open to having a
Yeah,
relationship of
yeah.
that nature with someone who may or may not ever be getting out. But before we get too far in the weeds, I want to go back to some information from Dr. Catherine Ramsland, who we're both huge fans of. She's commented extensively on hybristophilia, and she has the opinion that some people are simply attracted to others who avoid love and intimacy because they believe they can be the exception. They can be the special one, and they can essentially lure them into experiencing a relationship. So when we look specifically at those who are attracted to high profile killers, and again, according to the author Sheila Eisenberg, it's a case where a parasocial relationship is built and the free man or free woman can be seen as infamous by proxy. Essentially, they're in a way, they're fame seeking in a world that feeds off celebrity culture. I think that's a fascinating and very apt perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of, like, okay, Charles Manson being married 3 times and then having the
I
fiancé
know.
that, wanted the basically, I don't know. It was reported that she wanted to marry him, basically have the rights to his body after he died, this pseudo celebrity. And here we are talking about her, right? Like, we all remember that she looked exactly like all of the Manson girls from the
Yeah.
70s.
You can look at someone like Aaron Hernandez or Wade Wilson or even Ted Bundy or Richard Ramirez, which I think Richard Ramirez is that woman's description of him as cute
I don't get
really
it. I don't get
pushes.
it.
Yeah, I don't get that at all. But all of them are basically guys with sort of symmetrical features, which we neurologically recognize as attractive. I'm
Yeah,
just, like that's sort of
totally.
a slightly objective. And then you have Manson, who just look like a complete psycho, disheveled, I mean, like a cartoon version of
Right.
someone who's insane.
Yeah, yeah.
So the idea that that would attract, like, is even stranger to me. Can you explain that to
Well,
me?
it's honestly like if we're talking about this fiance of his towards the end, I really do think it was like these other motives, right? She is not
Right, right, secondary
attracted
gain.
to this wrinkled version of a cartoon of a person who's insane. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's just other stuff going on there for women like that, that she was willing to just be like, yep, this is me and I'm attached to this person. And I don't know, be really interesting to know kind
Yeah,
of really what motives were there and to know more psychologically about these women. And I think that, we get a little flavor in talking about, okay, so they all have some abuse history. Well, a lot of people do, but like what else is going
exactly.
on? Yeah,
Right.
we just don't have that. Again,
How
more.
much and what way triggered by what outside force is always the way to kind of take a step back and look at it rather than going, "Oh, this is the answer of why this happens," right?
Yeah, for sure. So, to address a more recent case where we have seen this phenomenon, let's look at the trial of Wade Wilson earlier this year. As reported by ABC News 7 in Naples, Florida, Wade Wilson was sentenced to death for the 2019 murders of two women, Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz in Cape Coral. Wilson, a powerfully built man, extensively tattooed with hate symbols on his body and face, as well as having a prolific social media presence, attracted a great deal of attention and support from female admirers. While Wilson's case has morphed into a truly disturbing social media spectacle, the focus, as we believe, should remain on the lives tragically cut short by his actions and the devastation experienced by the victims' families. To be clear, Christine and Diane have nothing to do with hybristophilia, but we don't want them to get lost in this narrative.
It's so important that victim stories get elevated. In this particular example, a lot about Christine and Diane is not necessarily put out to the public. But what we do know is that friends and family describe Christine as loving, as compassionate, and as an individual who deeply cared for everyone around her. Her family was active in the trial, and they're advocating for justice. And with the goal of ensuring that her memory remained at the forefront of the proceedings and it just didn't get lost in this rigmarole. Her family wanted her remembered for her kindness and her joy and not just being another victim in a media storm revolving around a notorious killer. Diane Ruiz herself was a mother, a friend, and just like Christine, she was described as a wonderful, loving individual, and her absence left a huge void in the lives of her family and friends. Her family also attended every court session with the goal of seeking closure and justice for Diane, while also grappling with the attention that Wilson received as his case turned into this unsettling spectacle.
Yeah, the impact statements of their friends and Diane's son in particular are really heartbreaking. One of those things that's hard to hear, but I feel like, something that we have to sort of bear witness to. We're not going to play them, but you can probably find them online, or there's a recent episode of Minds of Madness that covered this case that do play the audio, and it's done really well, so you can find it there. But the families have struggled to process the reality that the man who killed their loved ones has become the subject of fascination for people who seem really blind to the pain he caused. ABC 7 News reported on how both families have voiced frustration, especially as Wilson's notoriety grew on social media. His supporters, largely women from around the world, wrote letters to the court, pleaded for his life to be spared, and engaged in romanticized fantasies about him, all of which further traumatized the victims' families.
Much of Wilson's celebrity, quote unquote, status was fueled by the way his story circulated on social media platforms like TikTok. And going on those forums, whether it's TikTok or any other platform, you would find heavily edited videos of Wilson set to music, creating a romanticized version of him, which in itself, that action further removes his image from the violent reality of his crimes. By choosing to edit particular angles and body movements, adding pop or romantic music, and slowing down the regular pace and timing of the video, so these movements turned into sexy, languorous moments that completely belie his psychopathic acts. So a truly creepy clip that was played over and over and over of him was of him licking his lips at various times during the hearing. Video edits slowed down the action, which, when paired with his intensely blank and predatory stares of what appear to be fully black eyes, just truly resulted in chilling or a thrilling effect, just depending, I guess, on the psyche of the viewer.
I guess they haven't seen our little diagram of the shark eyes, huh?
I mean, it's truly shark eyes when you watch this. This kind of content has been described as a fantasy that is constructed and designed to elicit emotional responses rather than reflect the truth of who Wilson is and what his actions were. In reality, he's a convicted murderer who showed absolutely no remorse for the pain that he inflicted on his victims' families. And as you were saying earlier, in regards to his recorded conversations with his girlfriend and family members, he's making excuses. He's saying the drug's this, the drug's that.
Right.
But in the pictures of him in court, there is no response. I mean, there is nothing there except a real investment in how he looks,
And
really
that's a
putting
great
together.
way to put it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I notice over and over again in the documentaries and news footage that I watched is that he somehow, in restraints, managed to manspread over and over again. I get it. He's a big guy. It's an uncomfortable chair. You're sitting there for hours. You're in restraints. But this guy was manspreading just like many of the guys that we worked with at our
Uh-huh.
forensic site. Those ones that were the SVPs, sexually violent predators, and the narcissists would always adopt or attempt to adopt these power positions in group therapy.
Yeah, like, I'm just gonna take up as much room as possible. Here I
Right.
am. But also, like, simultaneously, this, like, fully relaxed position in court too, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just kicking back in my living room here.
Yeah.
It's just a big fuck you to the entire court
Absolutely.
proceeding.
That's exactly what it is. And the fact that people don't recognize it, the fact that
Mhm.
like whatever is going on is a biological imperative for survival. If we can fully prove that that exists, the idea that you drop all insight and all critical thinking in order to engage in those parasocial relationships is just mind-boggling. I get attraction. Like
Sure.
attraction is one thing. Attraction is that chemical push in your body that is like, oh boy, okay, I got the feeling there.
Right.
Whew.
Right.
But your rational mind is supposed to kick in and go, well, that's gross. This is just gross, and I need to think about this.
Well, yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think anyone could look at him and say, "Man, like, if he wasn't that, like, he's an attractive dude," right? And then you just start thinking about just the attitude, just the face tattoos, which is something I'm like, "All right, poor decision making, not a person that I'm interested in," right? And then thinking about just going down the road of all the horrific things he's done changes that into not being attracted to the person.
Right.
So, yeah, yeah. State Attorney Amira Fox and others involved in the case, including jurors and Wilson's own defense team, have echoed the sentiment that the attention should not have been on Wilson, but on the lives he destroyed. The focus, they argued, should be on remembering Christine and Diane, their stories, and the impact their deaths had on their families and communities. For the families of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, this distortion of reality is just another added layer of trauma. Their loved ones are not just footnotes in Wade Wilson's story. They are real people with real lives who were violently taken away, and their families must now fight to keep the focus on their daughters, sisters, and friends rather than on the man who murdered them.
Women from around the world, through handwritten letters and social media posts, have defended Wilson, citing his looks and charisma as reasons for their obsession. Marriage and family therapist Lucero explained that this fascination often stems from a desire to believe in the possibility of redemption. For some, being attracted to the ultimate bad boy in a safe way, since Wilson is behind bars, this allows them to project their own fantasies of love, change, and salvation onto him. The women who supported Wilson often shared backgrounds of trauma or abandonment, leading them to relate to Wilson's story and imagine themselves as the person who could, quote unquote, save him. However, the experts interviewed by ABC7 warned that this kind of attraction is deeply problematic, of course, because it overlooks the reality of the victim's suffering and the brutality of the crimes he committed. And I would go so far as to say, even a
Yeah.
delusional aspect of it wouldn't happen to me.
Oh, yeah.
He would not do that to me. So ABC News 7 made clear in its coverage that while the case may have gained social media traction because of the sensationalism surrounding Wilson, it's important to always shift the focus back to Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. Their families, those who love them, they just want people to remember the victims first. And as one juror from the trial stated, I just hope that once everything is said and done, people will remember their families and their victims and not Wade Wilson.
Well said.
So yeah, I thought that was really well done. I thought that ABC7, you can find that clip on YouTube and it's really well edited. It's really well put together. And I felt like in the construct of daily news, they were really making an effort to emphasize we do have to talk about this because it is a horrific crime. It is a very big event, and the families need to be remembered, as well as we need to shine light on how weird this phenomenon is. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that you're trying to do a multitude of things in that moment. So I kind of want to give them props for doing that. Although somebody who's listening could easily say, well, they're just pouring fuel on the fire. I mean, I get both of those. I
Yeah, for
want to go
sure.
back and say a couple of things, just like in observing, like I feel like I need a Clorox brainwash after watching a lot of the clips of him in trial and descriptions of what he did. It's really brutal. Some of the things that I notice is that he is a shark. The way he moves, even, just with the unedited footage, he is swaggering into court,
Mhm.
completely predator. His eyes are dead. Who knows? Maybe he was under a lot of drugs when it happened. He's not on under any drugs now. I'm not saying you can't get drugs in jail. You absolutely can get drugs in jail, but I doubt that that's what he would be doing.
Right.
And he's also engaging in what I would call whatever his particular choice for smolder is. I mean, it's what smolder if has sort of become like a little bit of a pop term, especially for those who watched Tangled. Tangled is the Disney version of Rapunzel, where the
Right.
lead bad boy, he goes, wait till I turn on the smolder. And then he has
Yeah.
this particular angle of his face and positioning of his mouth. Well, Wilson is doing the same thing. And it's kind of gross. It's fascinating and gross because to me, it's like looking at a snake. I mean, I look at it and it looks like the movements of a snake. I
Mm.
also think that there may be a practical reason because in his social media posts, he has a pretty impressive smile, like back when he was doing modeling and sort of doing influencer stuff, like good looking guy before he started getting like the Jack Skellington skull tattoo on his face or
Right.
whatever. But it looks like a couple of his teeth may have been knocked out.
Mm. We'll
And
do
you
that.
don't, well, meth will do that, or like thinking you're hot shit and,
Sure.
better
You're the
fighters than you will take you out,
Yeah,
right?
if you think you're the pretty boy in jail.
They'll fix that. They also know in the jail and the prison system is that much like our completely messed up insurance setup in this country, it's like we pay for health insurance, but then you have to pay separate insurance for your eyes and your teeth because apparently those don't have anything to do with health, which is completely ridiculous. But the way that sort of reflects in our incarceration system is that eyes and teeth are not prioritized as treatment. It's like we'll treat your heart,
Mm.
we'll treat your cancer, we'll treat all these things, but if you have to gum if you have to gum a bean burrito every day for the next 5 years, that's how long it's going to take for us to get you dentures. Like
Wow.
it's really wild. It's one of the things that was just kind of crazy to think about working in the prison. But let's move on to our media sort of entertainment version of this.
Yeah, let's shift to talking about the new film Joker, Folie Deux. There will be spoiler alerts, so I mean, I know the movie isn't getting great reviews, so I don't know if you guys out there will see it if you haven't already. So, just as a recap, Joker Folie Deux came out this year, this month. It's a highly anticipated sequel to 2019's Joker, which I thought was wonderful. And we talked about it a lot in terms of the incel phenomenon that was going on at the time. But it follows Arthur Fleck, who's played by Joaquin Phoenix, who is now institutionalized at Arkham Asylum, grappling with his dual identity as Joker. And while there, Arthur begins a relationship with Harley Quinn, played by Lady Gaga, another patient at the asylum. And their chaotic romance is explored against the backdrop of Arthur's internal struggle, all presented with a musical element, as the film includes a mix of psychological drama and musical sequences. And this unique approach reflects their shared descent into madness, adding a surreal layer to their already fractured minds. So we are not talking about folie de phenomenon disorder at this point. We're looking at it in terms of hybristophilia. So I think the question we wanted to sort of pose to ourselves and to listeners is, do we think Harley Quinn falls into having hybristophilia? Any thoughts off the top, Scott?
I would say that yes and no.
Okay.
So, in the immediacy about how they bring her into the story, absolutely, right? The way it
Yeah.
ends up, probably not so much. I also want to say, if by any chance you were out there listening, Stephanie, we really appreciate your artistry and your work and your donations. And I wanted to make sure that, like, it's one of the things that my colleagues, my friend, my husband, who worked on Joker 2, I'm being very, I'm going to be, I know that there are a lot of people that are not going to like the movie. I think it's beautiful. I mean, it's clearly,
I
like,
thought
from
so
a
too.
production design standpoint, it's
Yes.
beautiful. I have a feeling that when it hits its stride, it will not be seen as, I think it's going to end up being like a huge movie in the long run. And maybe it will take 10 years, but I think it's going to be one of those where people, maybe they can't really appreciate it fully right now. But I also, I could be wrong, who knows? But I want
Wait,
to also say
who's Stephanie?
the artist known as Lady Gaga is Stephanie
Oh,
Joanna
okay.
Angelina Germanata, and it is very important to her. She really prefers to be called Stephanie. I think as an actress, she wants to be known as Stephanie
Oh,
Germanata. So
well, then why
I
the heck
wanted
doesn't
to.
she have her credits like that? She
She
should.
should, yeah.
She should.
Maybe that was the business choice, but she was very personable and wonderful, as was Joaquin Phoenix to all the cast and crew. They're supposed to be absolutely lovely, and I
That's
think that they were
awesome.
trying to do something. I think Todd Phillips was trying to do something really important. In one interview or one article, they were saying Todd Phillips doesn't care if you hate the movie. You're supposed to.
Well, I
So
loved it. I mean, I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. Like it visually very similar to the first one, which I thought, same thing. Like it's kind of like they did this with Mindhunter where you just feel like you're looking through a layer of like cigarette smoke the whole time. It
yes,
has that like tingy nicotine,
that yeah,
dirty
sepia,
grayness.
dirty, yeah,
I love that, and I thought it was beautiful, and I really found the story super interesting. I'm wondering if, like, dudes who liked the first one are like, "It's a musical. We don't like the second one."
yeah. I remember one of my brothers was a teenager, and I'm as most people know, I'm younger than all of my siblings by a number of years, but I remember West Side Story came out, and my brother went to see it because he thought it was going to be about gangs fighting.
Right,
And
it
then he
was.
saw them like break into a dance number in the first 3 minutes. He was like, fuck this, and walked out
Mambo,
of the theater.
yeah. Come on.
So, well,
No,
so great. Let's
okay.
get back. Like, what do you think about the Hybristophilia angle?
Okay, so I get what you're saying about, like, yes and no. I actually am gonna go full on yes, because so Harley Quinn tells him right off the bat when they meet, basically, she says, "Look, I checked myself in here to be able to be closer to you, right? To like get to meet you." That's what comes out. Well, maybe not. Maybe like the story is like she set a fire, so she's in there. But then she eventually tells him, like, no, I did this myself because I wanted to meet you, which is like, okay, she had a target. She like went for it. Jumping to the end when he says basically that no, there isn't this split personality of me and Joker, like Joker isn't real. She's then like disinterested in him all of a sudden. Like the sexual attraction isn't there anymore. So I would say that, she really had the idea of like the bad boy Joker being the part of him that she was after. And once that fantasy or delusion was gone, she was out. She was like, nope, we're not staying together. So, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
all the other things like, she gets the guards to, and it's always hard because of the first one, you don't know what's real and what isn't in the first movie. And then this one, you're like kind of cautious of like things that are happening. But, she gets a guard to sneak her in so she can have sex with him before she gets released, basically checks herself out. And then she promises to be at the trial every single day. So I'm thinking about these like groupies are at the trial and she's sitting in the front row every single day and then starts to sort of dress up. That's more the Folie à Deux, like coming into his delusion,
Well,
but
like
that
the
all
Manson girls, right?
right,
Being
right.
reminiscent of him by carving the X's in their foreheads. And
Yeah, yeah.
the only, I guess, the thing that I would say the reason it kind of is not where the no is that I don't know in true hybristophilia whether or not the confession that one part of their criminal actions is not real is going to immediately turn off
Hmm.
the emotions. Because look, we had the example with Richard Ramirez when we started off the episode there was only one thing that actually did turn off the woman was when she found out he had raped a child,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
when it got
And then she was like, okay, I'm out, right? Like that was the light switch that is like, oh no, I'm not into this at all. So this is something that is really far on the other side of the spectrum. Is I'm not admitting that I did something, I'm admitting that I'm not something, that I'm actually
right.
not as bad as I purported to be. So I think we're probably kind of shuffling through nuances here
Yeah, for sure.
that but it's interesting for a presentation. But it did. I mean, I'm so glad that you went so far as to point this out about pseudo bulbar effect, which I don't know how many people are familiar with this. We haven't talked about it before,
I don't think
although
so.
what's interesting is there's starting to be commercials for it. Like there's actually more recognition that
No
this
kidding.
is an effect. Oh yeah, because there is treatment. There are, psychiatric medications which can help for this. But pseudo bulbar effect, which is also known as PBA, is a neurological condition that causes people to experience sudden, immediate, completely uncontrollable expression of emotions that are inappropriate. So, like laughing or crying. And it's not church giggles, it's not funeral giggles, it's not being overwhelmed with so much happiness that you suddenly start sobbing. Those are actually acceptable responses
Sure.
to high levels of stress. PBA actually is caused by damage to the central nervous system in the areas of the brain that control emotions. And it can be caused by a lot of different neurological conditions or injuries, including ALS, which is also known as Lou Gehrig syndrome, or a stroke, most commonly through stroke. And then even some forms of temporal dementia will
Right.
happen where people just have these, basically your brain is firing incorrectly. So Joker's laughing condition in the film is actually a real thing. This is actually a real thing. There are medical and neurological treatments that are for it. It doesn't cure it, but it can address some of the worst of it. So,
Yeah, and in the first film, they talk about his head injuries and abuse as a child, and so it kind of all fits together nicely. So, I mean, you and I have both seen the film. We sort of teased something that we thought might be visual, but I don't know,
as
maybe I blinked too much.
no, I think a lot of things end up on the cutting room floor because I wasn't able to find it, and even our friend Al, who put us in it,
Yeah.
wasn't
Can you
able to
say
find
how
it.
he put us in it?
Yeah, so I mean, most people know that it takes literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people to create and produce a big budget film. And the amount of creativity within big budget films where the director has a vision and is very much invested in having good production design means that you're going to get some of the best people in the industry. You're going to have some of the best artistry that no one will ever see
Mhm.
because it's in the background. Just because it's in the background, you don't do a shit job. You do a better job because it's in the background, basically. But our friend Al, who has worked with my husband for a very long time, Al has been on our show as the Exorcist super fan,
Yep.
but he's also a super fan of another area, and that is Batman. He is a
Yes.
super fan of Batman. He knows everything about everything. You could sit and, I mean, I would challenge anyone to question him on Batman and not get a
Yeah.
full answer.
And Star Wars, because that's why he and I get along so well.
Exactly. And actually and he's also one of the most raunchy, funny people,
I
brilliant
fucking love
mind, so
Al.
creative. He's just a great guy. But he wanted to include us in the movie. So there are a couple of scenes where don't want to give too much away, but where someone breaks into the records area of Arkham Asylum. And there were two former forensic psychologists that ended up, I believe they ended up ending their own lives because of being
Oh,
manipulated by other inmates there. So
we have
our
a whole
name,
backstory? I didn't know we had a
yeah.
whole
Oh no,
backstory.
we
I
didn't
thought we were just
survive.
signs on a door somewhere.
No, there were files about us. There were like at one point there were files with our
Mm.
names on them, and we also had our names on the doors in the hallways
Yeah,
in
offices.
Arkham Asylum, which was going to be in a couple of shots as people walk by. But a lot of things end up
Hey,
on the cutting room floor. If I get permission, I'll have to check this out with Al, but if we can post it, we'll post the
the still photos.
photographs.
Sure.
Yeah.
That would be cool. And I think they had you as your first name and then Scott. And then I was Dr. Shiloh Amber Shiloh. It's my middle name. So they used our first and middle names. So
Yeah.
very cool. Well, it's there somewhere.
But it was cool. Even just to be like the thought to be included was really cool.
I know.
If
I
for
love
those
it.
of you who have not seen it yet, if you are watching it on streaming or when you get a chance, during the courtroom scene, just when you get a good, clear, well-lit shot, hold the frame and look at the murals at the top of the courtroom that surround it, and you will see our friend Al's design of a mural that is about the 7 families of Gotham, which is very
Oh,
intrinsic and
wow.
integral to the mythology of DC Comics and Batman. And you know, the character that became known as the Penguin is the Cobblepot family, and there's like the Cobblepot family, the Wayne family, and then all the others as well. It's beautiful, but unfortunately it doesn't get as much. I think probably there'll be books posted afterwards that release a lot of the
Yeah.
artwork, but if you get a chance, look at it.
What a dream
So
job for him.
yeah, seriously. But we will be coming back to this subject. I mean, this is sort of a mini episode. We've touched on it before. I would say that this is probably one of those episodes that as more evidence and more research comes out on it, it's going to be worth plumbing again.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. And like I said, we're going to save our material for folks who are employed in positions in prisons that engage in relationships and some criminal behavior with people
Right.
they quote unquote fall in love with. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, have a very happy and safe Halloween, everyone. And we will see you next time on LA
Not so.
Confidential. Bye, guys.
Bye, folks. Happy Halloween.
We sincerely thank you for spending some time with us today. LA Not So Confidential is part of the Crawlspace Media Network. Each episode is hosted, produced, and written by Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh. Our post-production editing and sweetening magic is handled by the multi-talented Jason Usry of Ear Cult Productions.
Our theme music, entitled Cool Vibes Film Noir, is composed and performed by the talented Kevin MacLeod. He graciously allows us to use his music via a Creative Commons Attribution license. Please check out all of Kevin's amazing work on YouTube.
All of the resources for each episode can be found on our website at la-not-so-confidential.com. You can find us on Instagram at LA Not So Podcast, on X at LA Not So Pod, and on Facebook at LA Not So Confidential. Media inquiries and bookings are scheduled at alienistentertainment@gmail.com.
Once a month, we go live on YouTube on Saturday afternoon. So pay attention to our social media announcements to join our interactive broadcast entitled Behind the Couch, where we interview guests on a number of psych, criminal justice, and true crime topics.
And lastly, we'd be honored if you joined our Patreon at patreon.com/LA Not So Podcast. With a subscription, you get an ad-free listening experience, additional content, host interaction, and you'll be the first to know about upcoming live events, social gatherings, and super cool swag.
Thanks for listening, and join us next time on LA
Not So
Confidential.